You know that feeling when you download a new piece of software, or maybe you're just signing up for a gym membership and you get that massive wall of text,
Oh, yeah.
the terms and conditions. And because life is short and we're all, mere mortals, you just scroll straight to the bottom and click up.
I agree.
Right. It is basically the great lie of the digital age. I have read and understood the terms.
No, you haven't?
Exactly. Nobody has. But today, we're doing a deep dive into a world where clicking "I agree" without actually reading the fine print isn't just a bad habit. It is essentially professional suicide. We are heading into the high-stakes, high-pressure world of international construction.
We are. And specifically, we are looking at the documents that keep billion-dollar projects from turning into, well, billion-dollar lawsuits.
Right, so we have our sources today, which are the SEDA 2017 General Conditions of Dispute Avoidance and Adjudication Agreement, along with the DAAB Procedural Rules. And I know what you're thinking if you're listening to this. General Conditions sounds like the absolute cure for insomnia.
It really does.
But stick with us, because this document is actually a fascinating study in human psychology, conflict resolution, and really the art of stopping a fight before it starts.
That is the key right there, the stopping it before it starts part.
So set the scene for us a bit. We're talking about massive infrastructure projects here, dams, railways, skyscrapers. What is the actual mission of this specific document?
Well, to understand the mission, you really have to understand the history. Before 2017, these boards were called DABs, Dispute Adjudication Boards, and their job was effectively to act as a private court. So if the guys building the bridge and the government paying for the bridge got into a fight, they went to the DAB issued a ruling, and life went on.
So they were basically referees.
There were referees who spent most of their time just sitting on the bench waiting for a foul to happen. But the 2017 update changed the acronym. They added an extra A. It became the DAB.
Dispute Avoidance Adjudication Board.
Exactly. And that extra A represents a massive shift in philosophy for the whole industry. It's an admission that by the time you actually need a referee to make a formal ruling, you have already lost money.
Right.
The relationship is already completely damaged. So the avoidance part means these experts are now mandated to be proactive. They aren't just there to judge, they are there to prevent.
It's kind of the difference between, like, a heart surgeon and a personal trainer.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, one fixes you after the heart attack, and the other tries to keep you from having one in the first place.
That is a perfect analogy. And the document we are looking at today, the agreement and the procedural rules, that's the contract that essentially hires that personal trainer.
So let's look at the structure of this agreement, because it's not a standard two-party deal. It's not just, I hire you, you work for me.
No, and this is where people often get tripped up. It is a tripartite agreement, so a three-way contract.
And who are the three players in this?
You have the employer, so that's the client, the one with the money. You have the contractor, the construction company actually doing the work. And then you have the member, which is the DAAB expert. All three sign the exact same piece of paper.
See, that seems incredibly tricky when you think about loyalty. Because if I'm the contractor and I'm paying half this guy's fee, I fully expect him to look out for me. But the employer is paying the other half and probably expects the exact same thing.
And that is exactly why the criteria for being a member are so impossibly high. Clauses 3 and 4 of the general conditions set out what I like to call the unicorn criteria.
Unicorn criteria. Because these people don't actually exist.
Because they're very, very rare. First off, you have the independence requirement in Clause 4.1. Obviously, they can't have a financial interest in the project. That's just basic ethics. But look at the employment history restriction.
Yeah, I saw that. It says they cannot have been employed as a consultant or otherwise by the employer or the contractor in the last 10 years.
10 years?
That's a long time.
It is. In a specialized industry like, say, nuclear power or offshore drilling, the world is small. Everyone knows everyone. To find a world-class expert who hasn't taken a single paycheck from one of the major players in a decade, that is a really tall order.
Why is it so strict, though? 10 years just seems like a lifetime.
It effectively is a lifetime in professional terms, but the goal is to eliminate even the appearance of bias. Because if you worked for the contractor 5 years ago, even if you are totally neutral now, the employer will never truly trust your advice. They will always think, oh, he's just helping his old buddies. So the 10-year rule is a firewall for trust.
And there's another clause here that caught my eye. Clause 2.3 says the appointment is personal.
This is huge. In the corporate world, you usually hire firms. You hire a law firm, an accounting firm. But for a DAAB, you are hiring a human being.
So if I hire, let's say, Dr. Smith, the world's leading expert on concrete, She can't just send her junior associate to handle the site visit because she's busy that week.
Absolutely not. She cannot subcontract. She cannot delegate. You are paying for her brain, her eyes, and her specific judgment. If she can't be there, she literally has to resign.
Wow, that puts a ton of pressure on these individuals.
It really does. It means these unicorns have to be available, totally independent and highly skilled all at the same time.
Okay, so we have our unicorns. They've signed the three-way contract. Now let's talk about that extra A again. Avoidance. How does that actually work in practice? Does the DAB just wander around the construction site giving out unsolicited advice?
Not exactly. It is structured, but it is much looser than a court case. Definition 1.5 and Rule 2 of the Procedural Rules describe informal assistance.
Informal assistance. Sounds so polite.
Well, it's designed to be low stakes. In the old days, under the previous rules, if you had a disagreement, say, the contractor thinks the rock they are drilling through is harder than the initial report said, and the employer disagrees, you had to file a formal notice. You had to trigger a capital D dispute.
Which sounds pretty aggressive.
Extremely adversarial. It immediately puts everyone in a defensive crouch. But informal assistance allows the parties to say, hey, DAB, we are disagreeing about this rock. We haven't declared war yet, but can you just give us your opinion?
So it acts as a sanity check.
Yeah, exactly. The DAB can say, look, based on what I see, if you guys take this to a formal fight, the contractor's probably going to win, so maybe you should just settle this now.
And that advice isn't binding.
No. It's not a ruling at all, it's just advice.
Yeah.
But coming from the people who would be making the binding ruling later on, it carries a massive amount of weight.
But there's a constraint here, isn't there? The DAB can't just go around whispering in people's ears on site.
Correct. This is the big safety valve. Clause 5.1b generally prohibits the DAB from giving advice to just one party. They can't pull the project manager aside and coach him over a coffee.
Because that would obviously look like bias.
Exactly. Usually, informal assistance must be requested jointly. Both the employer and the contractor have to actually agree to ask for help together.
That's fascinating. It forces them to cooperate on the process of solving the problem, even if they completely disagree on the problem itself.
Which is a huge psychological win. Once you get them agreeing on the process, you are already halfway to a solution.
Now, for a DAB member to give good advice, they actually need to know what's happening. They can't just do this from a desk in London or Geneva.
No, not at all. And this brings us to Rule 3, the site visits. This is where the rubber meets the road, or, the mud usually.
Right, and the schedule for these visits is oddly specific in the rules. Rule 3.3 says they must visit at intervals of not less than 70 days and not more than 140 days. Why those specific numbers? Why not just say quarterly?
It's an attempt to engineer the Goldilocks zone. If you visit every 30 days, you are frankly just in the way. It's expensive, you're distracting the workers, and honestly, on a massive project, not enough changes in 4 weeks to justify the trip.
But if you wait 6 months,
then you've completely lost the thread. The vibe on site shifts. Relationships start to deteriorate. If you show up after 6 months, you are looking at history, not current events. So the 70 to 140-day window, which is roughly every 2.5 to 4.5 months, is the sweet spot for maintaining situational awareness.
Situational awareness, that's the exact phrase they use in Clause 5.1 day.
It is. They need to know the progress, yes, but they also need to sense the tension. If the employer and contractor stop making eye contact in meetings, the DAB needs to physically be there to see that.
But construction is chaotic. Things go wrong fast. What if there's a disaster? What if the government shuts down the site or the workers just walk off? Do they still have to wait 100 days for the next visit?
No, that is where Rule 3.5 comes in. Critical construction events. If there is a suspension, a termination, or a major accident, the DAB has to visit immediately upon request.
And immediately is strictly defined too, right?
It is rigid. Rule 3.6. If a party requests an urgent meeting, the DAB has to try to get on a video call within 3 days. And if they need to be on site, they have to try to get there within 14 days.
That is a very fast mobilization for an international expert.
It really is. But think about the economics of it. On a $1 billion project, the burn rate, the cost of just having the equipment and people sitting idle can be hundreds of thousands of dollars a single day. A last-minute business class ticket for the DAB is pennies compared to the cost of that delay.
Speaking of money, let's talk about how these unicorns actually get paid. Because the fee structure in Clause 9 is quite unique. It splits the pay into 2 buckets, monthly fees and daily fees.
This is often a massive point of contention during negotiations. Employers love the daily fee, paying for work actually done. They hate the monthly fee, which is paying for availability.
But the monthly fee is essentially a retainer, isn't it?
It is. Clause 9.1a. You are paying this person a fixed amount every single month just to exist as your DAB member, but you are paying for three things. First, priority. They have to be available for that urgent 14-day site visit we just talked about. Second, they have to read the monthly progress reports. And third, they have to maintain their files.
So even if they don't visit the site in October, they're still technically working in October.
And exactly. They're staying downloaded on the project. If they didn't get the monthly fee, they would completely ignore the project until the next visit, and then they'd have to spend the first 2 days just catching up on reading. The retainer buys you a prepared judge.
But the daily fee just covers the actual travel days and hearing days.
Correct. Now, there is a major trap here that I see parties fall into all the time. I call it the non-agreed fee dilemma.
Oh, what's that?
Sometimes, everyone is just rushing to sign the contract to get the excavator started on site. They pick the DAB members, they sign the DAB agreement, but they say, you know what, we will agree on the specific daily rate later.
And then, let me guess, they can't agree.
Then they fight. The contractor thinks $3,000 a day is fair. The employer only wants to pay $1,500. If they can't agree, Clause 9.3 kicks in. The appointing entity, usually a neutral body like FIDIC or an engineering institute, steps in.
And they just decide the fee for them.
They have exactly 28 days to set the fee. They look at the project complexity, the member's resume, and they literally just pick a number. And once they set it, it is totally final.
So by not agreeing up front, you are just handing your checkbook over to a stranger.
Precisely. You lose all leverage. It is a classic unforced error in these contracts.
I want to look at the payment mechanics too, because the tripartite thing makes it a bit weird. Who actually writes the physical check?
Technically, the contractor pays the invoice first. Then the contractor claims 50% back from the employer.
But contractors can run out of cash. Or they can get angry at a DI decision and just decide to, I don't know, not pay the invoice.
That is the nightmare scenario for a DEI member. I ruled against the contractor, and now mysteriously my check is lost in the mail.
So does FIDI have a way to protect them?
It does. Clause 9.7 provides what I call the nuclear option for payment. If the contractor doesn't pay within 56 days, the DAAB member can obviously suspend their services, but more importantly, they can turn directly to the employer and say, you pay me the full amount.
Like even the contractor's share?
Yes. The employer becomes the ultimate backstop. They have to pay the full invoice to keep the board functioning. Then the employer can recover that money from the contractor later, usually withholding it from their next payment with interest.
Wow. So it effectively guarantees the referee gets paid no matter who is winning or losing the disputes.
It has to, because financial insecurity breeds corruption. If a judge is genuinely worried about making their mortgage payment, they might hesitate to make a tough ruling against the guy who actively signs their checks. The structure completely insulates them from that pressure.
Okay, so we have the rules, the visits, the money. But sometimes relationships just break down. People want out. Let's talk about resignation.
Clause 10.1. A member can resign at any time.
Just, I quit.
I quit with 28 days notice. However, there's a fascinating safeguard in Clause 10.2. I call it the tag your it rule.
How does that work?
Imagine the DAA is right in the middle of a massive formal dispute. They've held the hearings, they've read thousands of pages of evidence, and they are literally about to write a ruling that will cost someone millions of dollars. The pressure is immense.
And the DAB member just thinks, I don't need this stress. I resign.
Exactly. They try to bail right before the verdict. But Clause 10.2 forbids this. It says if there is an active dispute currently being processed, the resignation does not take effect until after the decision has been officially issued.
You have to finish the play.
You have to deliver the bad news. You cannot leave the parties in procedural limbo right at the finish line.
That protects the process from the DAB member bailing. But what protects the member from the parties? Can the employer just fire a member they decide they don't like?
Not unilaterally. Clause 10.3 requires a joint notification. Both the employer and the contractor have to actually agree to fire a member.
So if I'm the contractor and I think the DAB hates me, I can't just fire him.
Not unless you can convince the employer to agree with you. And if the DAB is consistently ruling in the employer's favor, the employer is never going to agree to fire them. This ensures that one angry party can't just blow up the board because they're losing.
But what if I'm right? What if the member actually is biased? Like, what if I find out he's secretly holding stock in the employer's parent company? There has to be a way to get rid of him then.
That is the challenge procedure, and this is where the procedural rules get incredibly strict. Rule 10 covers objections.
I looked at this one. It puts a literal shot clock on the objection.
It does. If you learn of a fact that suggests bias, you have exactly 7 days to raise a formal objection.
7 days.
Yeah.
That is nothing in legal terms. Usually lawyers take 7 days just to draft the email header.
It is absolutely brutal, but it is designed to prevent pocketing.
Pocketing.
Imagine you find out the judge has a conflict of interest. A sneaky strategy would be to just keep that information secret. You let the case proceed. If you win, great. If you lose, then you pull out the conflict of interest card and try to get the judgment thrown out.
Ah, so you play the game, but keep a reset button in your pocket just in case.
Exactly. The 7-day rule destroys that strategy entirely. If you know about the bias and you don't speak up within a week, you are legally deemed to have accepted it. You waive your right to object entirely.
And if you do object within 7 days and the challenge is successful, what happens then?
Then it is total scorched earth. The member is terminated immediately. They don't get paid any fees from the date of the decision. But the real consequence, the one that keeps project managers awake at night, is in Clause 11.5c, retroactive voiding.
Retroactive voiding. What does that actually mean for the project?
It means any decision made by the DAB after the challenge was raised becomes completely void. It effectively evaporates.
So if the challenge process took, say, 2 months to resolve, and in that time the DIB issued a ruling on a $50 million claim.
Poof. Gone. It's as if it never happened at all. You have to start completely over with a brand new member.
That is a massive waste of time and money.
It is. Which creates a huge incentive for everyone to resolve challenges quickly, and an even bigger incentive for DAAB members to be absolutely squeaky clean from day one. The system is designed to purge bias aggressively because the collateral damage is just so high.
When you look at all of this together, the unicorn criteria, the mandatory site visits, the informal assistance, the strict timelines, it really feels like FEI is trying to engineer human behavior.
They're trying to mechanize trust.
Mechanize trust. I really like that.
Trust is hard to scale. When you have a construction consortium from Korea, a government client in Africa, and engineers from Canada, you can't just rely on a handshake. So FADI essentially replaced the handshake with procedure.
But the heart of it is still that A, avoidance.
It is the realization that while conflict might be inevitable in construction, litigation is optional. By forcing these parties to sit down with a neutral third party every 70 to 140 days, by forcing them to ask for informal assistance together, you are actively trying to break the cycle of ego.
It's forcing them to communicate before the lawyers ever get involved.
Exactly. It's the difference between fixing a small leak and dealing with a flooded basement. The DAB is just there to point out the leak while it's still manageable.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If this system, this standing dispute avoidance model, works for billion-dollar dams and power plants, why don't we see it elsewhere?
How do you mean?
Well, think about other high-friction environments for a second. Corporate mergers,
Right.
international trade deals, even politics.
You want a DAB for Congress?
Honestly, why not? Imagine 3 independent experts agreed upon by both sides who have to visit every 70 days. And when gridlock hits, they step in and provide informal assistance.
Excuse me, Senators, but under Rule 2, we suggest you pass this budget or you're all in breach of contract.
And if they try to fire the DAB, they have to do it jointly, which they could obviously never agree on.
It would certainly change the dynamic. We might see a lot less performative fighting and a lot more actual building.
Maybe that's the ultimate takeaway here for anyone listening. Whether you are building a skyscraper or just trying to manage a team at work, sometimes you need a neutral third party to walk the site, check the vibe, and offer a little informal assistance before things totally explode.
And remember the 7-day rule. If you have a problem, speak up now. Don't pocket it for later.
Very wise words. Well, that's it for this deep dive into the art of avoidance. Thanks for exploring this with us, and we'll see you on the next one.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.